AskReddit. What happened in school that still ticks you off? I was in the school finals of some general knowledge quiz/competition. The question I was asked was, what is the collective noun for a group of whales? I answered confidently, a pod. The illiterate teacher had a school written on her answer card, refused to listen when I assured her it was indeed a pod. Her ignorance cost me the grand title, and I was practically in tears, in front of the whole school, at the injustice of it. Everyone then labeled me as a bad loser. Will never forget it. Still seethe on it from time to time. It happened in 1985. A girl in 3 of my classes was allowed by the administration to have her cell phone during classes because her father was dying. I was aware of the situation, since it was happening for a week and she often had little breakdowns. One day, in first period, her phone vibrates while the teacher is talking. He disregards that fact that she's allowed to have her phone and demands she hand it over to him. I believe he said something along the lines of "I'll read it, and if it's not your mother then I'm keeping it," her phone, for the rest of the class because it rang while I was talking. Well, the girl flips out, starts crying as soon as she sees her phone screen. She said no, she's leaving. This starts a standoff between the teacher and her. He ends up blocking the doorway while still demanding her phone. His logic was, if he didn't know it was her mom texting her then he can't let her leave. At this point, she's inconsolable and everyone in the class is screaming at him to let her go. Like, screw your complex dude, let her go. And he's screaming back, I'm in charge here. To the point the class made so much noise that security came in to see what was going on. Security tells the girl just go to the office. Her dad did die that day and she wasn't in school for a month. The teacher had a leave of absence as well, and we had a sub the rest of the year. From then on, students were not allowed special circumstances for cell phones and teachers were not allowed to block students from leaving. The real kicker is this was intro to photography and most students were there because we had to take a mandatory elective. Screw you, Mr. M. You were a horrible person to that poor girl who only wanted to see her dad one more time. I'm mad just typing this out. A teacher told me I couldn't keep a bottle of water in my locker because it could be vodka or something. I told her she could smell it and check. She said, that's not my job, and that I could just use the drinking fountain. I asked her if she would use the drinking fountain instead of her mug/the tap in the teacher's lounge. She wouldn't answer. A guy threw his cheat paper at me in an exam. The invigilator saw it, but instead of throwing him out of the class he threw me and gave me an F in that exam. I had to pee. Then I asked to go to the restroom. The substitute, full-time teacher for another class, said, you don't have to pee. Just sit down. After a bit more pleading and begging I just peed my pants. I was 8 and totally mortified. What made it worse is that the teacher told my parents that I should have spoken up earlier and accidents happen. I still think I should have peed on her desk. 10th grade class. Relatively early in the semester, but getting a 90 so far. One assignment was to make a flash animation. There wasn't really a formal submission process, and students just had to show the teacher that the assignment was done. I was the first one to finish. I showed the teacher. He said good. I moved on to do other assignments. About a week later I got my updated class average, which dropped to 78 somehow. I talked to the teacher, who said he never saw my flash assignment. I argued that I was the first one done, that he even commented on it, and my friend was sitting right next to me when I showed it to him. He was basically like, nope, never saw it. Eventually got my average in that class back to mid-80s by the end of the semester. But the guy should have had a better submission process than just show me it's done. My teacher lost my finals then made me retake them while making passive-aggressive comments about me trying to cheat. 2 weeks later she found my original final on her desk under a pile of papers. Last year of primary school, I was being bullied on a daily basis. One kid stabbed me between the shoulder blades with a compass. Teacher, seeing the blood through the back of my shirt, declared that I'd done it myself to my mother. In the 2nd grade our class was walking in a single file line outside for recess. It had rained and was muddy and slick. The class bully, a heavyset mean girl, was walking ahead of me. She slipped in the mud and fell on her ass. She jumped up and immediately pointed her finger at me. That girl said I pushed her. I got detention for a few days and had to spend that recess with my head down on a desk in the teacher's office. I swore I didn't do it and no one believed me. Wow, that was like 1989 or 1990 and yeah, still pisses me off. When I was 16, I started living by myself. One of the things that still pisses me off years later about the first year or so that I lived alone is that, even though my marks were actually improving at the time, there were still teachers who told me they liked me better when I lived with my parents. Yeah, please teacher, tell me more about how I should have moved back in with my abusive parents. In my last year of junior school, I arrived to find everyone gossiping about two friends and I being in trouble for some reason. We'd been accused of bullying this kid. We had to apologize to him. We got called to the headmaster who blew his top, and our form teacher told us that she hoped we'd get bullied when we went to secondary school. Most of which rolled fine, but when we went to apologize I didn't so much as even recognize him, let alone know him or bully him. He turned out to be a good guy, so at least I made a friend for the final 3 months of school. Even to this day I can't guess how this story originated. We had this multicultural fair at my elementary school and the faculty wanted a Japanese kid to do origami at the Japanese station. I was the only kid that knew origami. I was, and still am, Filipino. So, they had me pretend to be Japanese and do the paper cranes and frogs and stuff. It was just ridiculous. 9th grade. Was loading onto the bus in summer school. A kid sat in a seat that a girl wanted. I told him not to worry about her. She proceeded to slap the stuff out of me. As she was rearing back to slap me again I pushed her away. At that exact time the driver gets on and sees me pushing her. We both go kicked out of summer school. I was only going so that I could graduate as a junior. She screwed up my whole plan for high school. During a math test in 7th grade 2 girls behind me kept whispering and throwing bits of paper at me trying to get me to move so they could copy me answers. They were getting on my nerves, and when I couldn't stand it anymore I turned around to tell them to leave me alone. Unfortunately, I did this at the exact moment that the teacher stood up to check on the class. What pisses me off today is not that I failed the test and got sent to guidance, but that the 2 girls behind were the first ones to yell OHH, that guy's in trouble. Snickering at me as I took my walk of shame out of the classroom and telling everyone in the school that I was caught cheating. That was the day I learned the world is unfair. I had my person and all my belongings searched on 4/20 simply because of who I was, and I was acting lethargic. The stupid vice principal opened my bag and said it smelled like marijuana in the pocket where I kept my cologne. Sent to ICE, my home away from home, because they couldn't prove I was high, but they knew I was. Definitely didn't smoke. Knowing something like this was coming. Was talking to the guidance counselor about how it was ridiculous to me that a single missed assignment would drop my grade by 20 to 30 points, regardless of its importance. She said, just because something is wrong doesn't mean you should try to change it. Why the hell would a guidance counselor give that type of advice to a freshman in high school? A couple weeks into my freshman year, I transferred into a more advanced science class. On my first day in the new class there is a quiz. I asked the teacher if I was exempt from the quiz since it was my first day. She said no. I did well, especially for not having been taught any of the material. Here's what bugged me. The final question on the test was what country is ticket from? Of course I got it wrong. The sentence doesn't even make sense. She wouldn't give me any clarification during the test, so once it was graded I asked what in the world she meant. Turns out ticket is her pet bird. Ticket. For one, capitalize the name of your pet. Also, that's not an appropriate test question. I told the teacher I had no idea that was her bird. She said, well, now that you know I'm talking about my bird, I'll give you another chance. What country is my bird from? I was stunned that she thought I was now equipped to answer this question. I wasn't in class to hear her reveal where her bird was from. I guessed something like Chile. She says wrong. It's Africa. That's not a country. I was so mad. She also arrogantly proclaimed every so often for the first few weeks, if anyone spotted her making an error, they get an instant A for the year. I can't count how many times I busted her in class, but she never stuck to her word. Last of all, some random girls I didn't even know told the teacher I taught the bird swear words, and I got in trouble for that. I never said a word, much less swear words, to her bird.